Okay, everybody good?
Good.
Suzanne, you good?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to call the meeting back to order. Let's start with pledge allegiance. Commissioner Morai, will you lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Suzanne, can you do a roll call?
Chairman Robb,
Here.
Vice Chairman Wu,
Here.
Commissioner Bliss,
Here.
Commissioner Lane, here, Commissioner Macbeth,
Here.
Commissioner McNitch,
He is absent today.
Commissioner Morai,
Here.
Commissioner Wallace,
Here.
and Commissioner Young.
Here. County Advisory Board, can you please stand and introduce yourself?
Tom Casanelli, Humboldt County.
Gil Yannick, Carson.
Brad Johnston, Lyon.
Joe Korean, Pershing. Miles Humphreys, Washoe.
Anche, Washoe.
John Reed, Washoe. Rex Flowers, Washoe.
Kevin Strozzi, Nye County.
Paul Dixon, Clark. Glenn Bunch, Mineral.
Mitch Pizzetti, Elko.
Corey Lytle.
All right, thank you, guys. We'll move on to agenda number 12, approval of agenda. Everybody had time to review the agenda, and is there any changes we need to make? Take things out of order or anything? All right, this is an action item. Any public comment on the agenda?
Darrell Harwell with,
Could you please come to the podium so we can get you on the record?
Darrell Harwell with Nevada Waterfowl Association. I do not see on your agenda, this is a meeting where you have to pick a sponsor for the next 2 years. You do not have it on the agenda item.
I see that, Darrell, and we'll have to figure out how we can address that. Any other public comment on the agenda? All right, I'll bring it back to the commission. Anybody have a motion?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Macbeth, second by Commissioner Wallace. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed unanimous. Member items and announcements. Any members have anything they want to bring up at this point? Commissioner Wallace.
Just real quick, Mr. Chairman, the park committee met, but it wasn't an official meeting. And they have rescheduled it for, I believe, April 8th. And we'll actually have some action items on the agenda, something with not getting it posted in time. So we met and they just did an overview of the program, and Director Wasley was there and answered a few questions for them and helped them with some of the program descriptions and what was going on. I still haven't seen an agenda yet, but it started out as an agenda to elect a chairman, and then it went to just informational items. And next time I believe it's going to be elect a chairman, and I'm not sure exactly else. I haven't seen an agenda yet.
All right.
I'll keep Director Wasley in the loop if I get something that he doesn't. If he gets something, let me know too, because it didn't seem like the communication was very good on that whole deal.
Yep, part of what happened was they weren't in compliance with the posting requirement of open meeting law, so what were action items became informational items, and it kind of derailed some of the intended purpose of the meeting, so it was more just informational, and I'm sure they'll comply with the requirements next time, so they'll be able to take action on some of those items.
Yeah, and I'm gonna try and attend in person next time. I did it by phone, and I felt like they just put me on a speakerphone and set it in the middle of the table, because sometimes you could hear and sometimes you couldn't, and it doesn't work that way, so I will attend in person the next time.
Any other commissioners have any comments? Commissioner Macbeth?
Yesterday, we, as part of our function on the commission, dealt with two hearings, appeals to the commission for various items. And we spent a very substantial period of time doing that. And I know I was, frustrated at the amount of time it took. I talked to a number of commissioners, just, in general, and, everybody is frustrated by the fact that we spend that much time on a hearing matter and then can't get to some of the items on the agenda, some of the very important items that we need to talk about, like shed ambers. And I know that other departments or divisions, for instance, the Nevada Division of Water Resources has a dedicated hearing master. Now, I don't know if that is, they probably have enough hearings on a regular basis, dealing with water issues that they have a need for that. But I don't know if there's anything we can do, but I just, feel that especially we start doing more of these, is that it's going to be, a lot of commitment and time, and I'm, I guess I'm just frustrated that we can't get to our other issues.
Commissioner Young.
I agree with Commissioner McDuff, Mr. Chairman. Also, I don't think they provide us the proper support material in legalese for us to make a real competent decision. I didn't feel very comfortable. And I've been around the law enforcement and legal system for a lot of years, as is Mike, and I think we would be much better served by having some other process. Hearing master is not that hard to obtain. Many organizations I'm involved with use process similar to that. People that are professional and do that on a regular basis, and usually they're but that was way too much time spent on that.
And anybody else have anything? And I agree with both of you on that, but it looks like we need to do some adjustments to NAC and NRS, and we need to, before we can go forward that direction, we need
Kim's
to,
out there in the audience, so let's get started.
we need to back up a little bit before we go forward in that direction. But I totally agree. And as many of those as I would sit through, I don't think the outcome has ever been what the appellant wanted. It seems like we spin our wheels for an awful long time to get back to exactly where we started. And so we do need to change that process, but we need to look at the NAC, NRSs, and just figure out where we need to go with it.
Mr. Chairman, may I briefly, is the mic on?
No, please.
No.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just briefly address this issue. The other entities that I do work for, a lot of times I'll have two DAGs. One DAG will prosecute and one DAG will advise the board. Also, a lot of times the boards are frustrated because they don't get the materials before the hearing to prepare for it. Under evidentiary proceedings, sometimes you are not allowed to see the evidence before it's introduced before the board. So sometimes it's very frustrating to a board also. They're saying, I spent too much time having to look through all of these documents, see 20 or so documents. But under the evidentiary rules, sometimes that's the way it is. You can't see the documents till they're properly introduced. So those are just some items that you might want to think about. But you're right, you probably have to go back and change the NRS and NAC to have a hearing officer or something like that.
Okay, any other commission comments? I do have one. I really appreciate Truckee Meadows Community College letting us use this facility. It's worked out fantastic. It's great to work with. Our first experience with dealing with video conference, I think, has gone fairly well. Because of the meeting yesterday, we didn't have much interaction with Elko or Clark County, but I think this process is gonna work. If Fred Bolts didn't keep pushing this, I don't know if we'd be sitting here right now, so. We're here, this is a process I see going forward a lot, and I appreciate TMCC letting us use this facility. Anybody else have anything? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 14, county advisory boards. You have any, Mr. Dixon?
For the record, Paul Dixon, Clark County. I will state that although Fred up here sees you a lot, and also Stephanie Myers and Jana Wright, I think for the last 18 months, Clark County have been asking repeatedly to have what we have here, so I wanted to acknowledge that they were very excited that this was going to be set up and working for them. Tony, yesterday you mentioned the Overton CMP. We're now, I want to say, close to 18 to 24 months into the development of that. And it's been a good 12 months since Clark County has seen where you've taken the recommendations and done stuff. When are we going to be able to see a copy of that CMP for comment, to see how the recommendations that were given and taken in Clark County were dealt with?
I think I saw Alan coming. There he is. Hey, Alan. Do you have any idea?
Yeah. I guess I'll come down to the mic.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot. I've been asked a lot.
I think you did.
Well, I've been asked it for weeks. I got emails this morning, so I wanted to make sure I asked.
You bet. So, Alan Janae, for the record. What we said at the last meeting was that we would try to get this into the next agenda after this. So we should be releasing between this commission meeting and the next. It'll go out for public review. We'll try to get it on the next agenda so that we can kind of receive comment and hear about it. So,
Thank you.
you bet.
That's all I got. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Sorry about putting you on the spot, Tom.
Mr. Johnston?
Good morning, Brad Johnston, Lyon County. I don't want to belabor the point, but maybe it's my background as an attorney. Sitting through yesterday, I had such sympathy for the Deputy Attorney General, for Chief Game Warden Rob Bonamich in this commission, because the provisions set out for effectively an adversarial process or an adversarial hearing. The commission sitting as the group hearing the appeal cannot be the advocate for the department. The Deputy Attorney General, who is assigned to advise this commission, cannot be the advocate for the department, and for the Chief Game Warden to be a law enforcement officer who's to be the witness and set forth the facts, to be forced into the position of advocate is unfair. So as we look at this, I urge that somehow we get a second Deputy Attorney General here to be the advocate for the department in such a contested hearing. I conveyed that to others during the meeting, but I wanted to state it publicly. It was very frustrating, maybe because I'm an attorney, to listen to arguments that were being made, and it felt as though the department did not have the resource it needed to respond with legal arguments that this commission could then consider as part of its deliberation. So I think that really needs to be part of the process if you're going to have an adversarial hearing that is set forth in the code sections. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bezzetti?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mitch Bezzetti for Elko County. First of all, in Elko County, we would like to thank the Traffic Committee for coming up to Elko County and spending the afternoon with us up there. I thought it was very educational. At our last advisory board meeting, we had the trapping issue came up, and our advisory board decided that we would make a motion to leave the regulations as is for trapping. But a couple other things came up that I thought that were pretty important and really was talked about a lot, and it was education. And a lot of the trappers there, they would really like to see maybe the department sit down with the Trappers Association, sportsmen, get everybody involved and come up with a website program that addresses trapping, maybe shows you what to do if your animal is caught in a trap, how to take it out, helps trappers out on how to fill out their paperwork correctly, and all those things. And I think that's something that the department could really engage in right now, and this program could get started maybe as quickly as possible, and this would really help out this issue of trapping and things like that, just education for both the trapper and maybe, the public. So that's just kind of what our stance was. Thank you.
Commissioner Drew.
Just to address that real quick, and I don't think it came up in our update yesterday, and that was probably my fault, but after the Elko meeting, at the Reno meeting, I think there was a recommendation through the committee that our future meeting in Vegas actually have an education agenda item. So that is on the committee's radar. And I didn't mention that yesterday, Mitch, and I probably should have, because it happened after the meeting in Elko, so.
Well, perfect. Thank you.
Any other cab have anything they want to bring forward at this point? Seeing none? Oh, sorry about that. Gotta raise your hand quick, we're trying to get this thing done today.
Miles Humphreys, Washoe County Cab. I also drive for UPS, and on a daily basis, I see the wild horses in the Washoe Lake State Park. And it's been brought up at various cab meetings that these horses don't belong there, and now they're into the scripts, which I guess is the department's responsibility. Am I correct on that, or no, or yes? So, and it's also an important thing to take into consideration that, it's coming up into breeding season. There's going to be a lot of critters out there with nests and whatnot, and I just don't think that it's necessary to have all these wild horses trumping the grounds and messing around with the wildlife that needs to be there and that's supposed to be protected. So if we could take it into heavy consideration, push it up on the agenda, that would be great. Because it's a big concern to a lot of people and a lot of organizations out there, and it's kind of frustrating seeing the horses on a daily basis because they're moving all through that area. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. Any other cabs have any comments? Seeing none, now we'll move on to agenda item number 15, 2015 legislative session overview. Kim Jolly.
Good morning. Kim Jolly, Management Analyst 3 for the Director's Office in the Nevada Department of Wildlife. This morning, I am going to share with you the process that the department undergoes to submit bill and draft requests. It is just March, however, May 16th is when the department and all the other state agencies under the executive branch have to submit our bill and draft requests, or BDRs. And if you remember last session, the 2013 session, there was a lot of discussion and lots of committee, legislative committee hearings within the Wildlife Commission, so I thought I would just share with you. And I do have something I'd like to put up just for the folks in the other areas here. Yeah. And what I'm handing out is already in the commission guidebook, which is on our website under the Wildlife Commission. And it's the page that discusses legislative relations in Nevada in the commission guidebook, which I update after each session. So that information has been there since, I'd say, the 2007 session. It hasn't changed. Of course, the players change every year. So basically, just so you understand, the department is under the restriction of the executive branch's 100 BDRs. Now, there are a lot of agencies under the governor, and he has to prioritize and choose 100 BDRs out of all of the requests that are there. Just for a little perspective, I believe the past 3 sessions that the department has submitted BDRs, we've received approval to pursue 1 or 2 each session. That's not the only process to gain a BDR, but that's what executive agencies have to do. Also, go back one to the folder. Excuse me for that. So the first stage that we go through is the stage 1, and that's submitting BDR concepts to the executive branch, to the governor's office, and the budget office, and Department of Administration. And this is nothing more than a sentence or two that summarizes the policy idea or the changes that we wish to make in Nevada revised statutes. It's not the full-blown white paper or problem and solution statement that we need. It's just an idea so that the governor's office can say, weigh the policy implications of it and say, yes, this sounds like something that fits within my policy beliefs. And what I brought for you is last session's statements, and then drafts, and then the final BDR, just so you can kind of see the evolution of the process. So last session, we submitted 2 BDRs in May 2012, a full, what have you, 9 months before the February 2013 session started. And one of them was the State Lacey Act, and it was just the 2 or 3 sentences that you see up there discussing it's unlawful to possess wildlife that was illegally acquired in another state. Simple statement. The second concept that we submitted was a boat law cleanup to model the stolen car process, to create that in NRS 488, stolen boat process, and then we had to clean up some accident reporting language. So this is all we had to submit at this stage. The governor waived those, said, okay, go ahead and pursue the drafting process. That doesn't mean that he's supportive of this as a BDR or that he makes this a priority. He's just saying, okay, go ahead for it. So we did that, we brought it up and through the Wildlife Commission's Legislative Committee. And the Legislative Committee weighed the idea, and they actually said, you know, we can't support this until we actually see language, but we understand your concept, go ahead. And just so you understand, in Nevada, the Wildlife Commission is a separate advisory to the departments. The department still seeks approval only from the governor. That's not to say that we don't listen to the Wildlife Commission. We take all of their input and all of the public and county advisory board input into the idea, but we have to go through our processes to get approval from multiple different entities, including the governor. So after this, then we start doing research. We start doing research on the policy idea and the NRS changes that we want. And a lot of times we look at other states. We look at how they handle things. We look at other chapters in NRS, how they handle things. And that's what we did here. So I'm going to go to the next stage here. So the second stage of this is we're doing our research, and that's actually how we came up with the boat law NRS changes. We looked at another chapter in Nevada revised statutes that discusses stolen automobiles and how they are handled. And so we looked at that language, and then we also have to come up with a problem statement and a solution statement for the governor's process for submitting BDRs. So we had to come up with these, basically like a term paper. What's the problem? What's the solution? And part of the solution is change to NRS. So it's a research project, basically, for us. We also come up with background information. Changes from other states that we attach, articles, examples, things like that. So this kind of shows you, problem. We put down the problem. We're required for the boating law to report all boating accidents in the state to the U.S. Coast Guard. They raised their threshold from 500 to 2,000. The solution, amend NRS to $2,000 threshold. And then below that, we include in color the language that we want to change in NRS, and that's what we submit as our background. And this is just the stage, I'd say, before we've actually submitted the BDR into the formal process in MEPS, in the executive budget system. This is what I would gather from the division administrators, from the subject matter experts, our voting law officer down in Las Vegas. We gather all this information. Then we go through process of leadership team reviewing all of this, the director's office looking at the language, looking at the problem and solution statements to make sure it makes sense, to make sure it's going to be as understandable to people that are going to be debating it in February through May as possible. And as you all know, when you submit something to LCB, it doesn't always come out the way you had it in your head. They have to use their legalese so that it matches with their NRS. What we can do is say, this is the chapter that we want to change. If we have language, we submit the actual language, and then all of that background information. They have a lot of other questions as well in the budget systems and BDR process. And I'll show you that form here. So you can go back and look at what this is. And then you can go to PDF. So how many of you have gone down to Carson City during the legislative session? Raise your hands. Okay, a couple of you. So you see what it looks like when there's a formal BDR that's turned into a bill. There's usually a little executive summary at the top. There's usually a fiscal note that says no impact to the state or impact to the state. And there are actually a lot of pages that go into developing state agency BDRs. I don't know if there's more for us than legislators, but we submit the problem statement, the solution statement, the language, and if you'll scroll down, we submit related budget accounts. This one affected law enforcement division budget. And then we have to decide what kind of bill it is. Is it policy or is it housekeeping? Housekeeping is like a cleanup to the language. And then we have to submit the contacts. We have to know in advance, in May, who's going to testify, what their contact information is. We have to estimate if there's any impacts to state or local government, including any kind of prison time that local government, county sheriffs would have to have an impact of. We have to also research, has this bill draft idea ever been proposed by us before in previous sessions? And then we have to explain, well, if you're submitting it again, what's different this time? And then we'll scroll down. And is there an unfunded mandate? We have to submit that as well. And we do all of this work, and then, like I said, the governor's office has to determine, prioritize all of the other state agencies' BDR requests, and only pick 100, including his own policy requests and housekeeping requests. He does get some separate ones to implement his budget, but as far as all the other agencies go, he has to prioritize. The boating law one actually didn't make it. We only got one formal end-all BDR last year, or last session. We did get the Natural Resources Committee to pick this one up as their proposal, and so it did go forward. That's another way to do this. So we've already done all this background work. We actually used the problem and solution statement and all the background research to help us with our testimony when we go down during the session hearings, the committee hearings. But just so you understand, there's all of this background, and if we don't get our BDRs picked up, we still have to ask permission from the governor if, can we go and seek another sponsor for this bill draft idea? If he says no, then it's done. In this case, he was fine with it, so we picked up the committee sponsor. We also had a amendment to the aquatic invasive species law that we we asked permission to seek a sponsor for, and we got an assemblywoman who actually sponsored the first bill. We also had a request last session for the Humboldt WMA water right application, the negotiation with the water rights engineer that we had submitted as a budgetary request, because some that seem like they're budgetary requests, you can submit those in the later deadline. However, they turned that one around and said, well, that's this policy and you should have submitted it in May. So that was another one that we had to seek a sponsor, and we got another Natural Resources Committee to sponsor it. So there are different ways. There are, of course, ways to just go directly to a legislator, but in our case, for the department, we have to seek approval through the budget office and Department of Administration, and also Governor Sample. So all that being said, that's how we get through our bill draft requests. Then, around December, January, February, of course, we're convening Wildlife Commission's Legislative Committee. And we have those meetings periodically when things come out and when we get language and they review them. And that's the process for the commission to take positions on things. So we pull those bills as we're tracking them. We see what affects wildlife, and we include our bill draft requests. Sometimes they never become bills. Sometimes they stay BDRs because they don't get introduced because somebody doesn't like it or whatever. And that's the process of that. The same thing with positions. The department has to go through the governor's office to take positions on any bills. So if you see a wildlife bill that is hopping through the legislature and you say, why isn't the department taking a stance on this or that? Well, we have to go through these same processes. The Wildlife Commission, in some cases, also has the governor's, where he has to advise them on whether their position on something fits within his big picture policy package. So that's kind of the process for us. After we go through all of these stages, of course, things get amendments. People try to tag things on to bills. Sometimes they die in committee. There's a lot of different stages that have to go forward. So that's just kind of a glimpse for you. I didn't bring the concepts that we have right now because we're still developing them, but for the May 9th and 10th meeting, we hope to have the list of the BDR concepts that we have going, and possibly even some language that we can look at. But that's just an overview. So you understand there's a lot of research and background and review and discussion before we can even submit it for people to take a look at, because we have so many stages we go through. Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay, let me go ahead.
Questions? Okay, it is.
I guess my question would be on, we've had a lot of issues based on the last legislative session, one of those being the registration issue, tracking registration issue. Is the commission going to present those changes in these bills? Or is there an expectation that the agency TrailSafe, which presented SB 213 in the last legislative session, is going to bring those changes? I guess that would be my question, since we know that we have a problem and we're going to have to get that resolved.
And I don't know if we have an answer for that right now. I think it's one of those things, we do have the legislative committee of the commission. I think that'd be one of those things reviewed to the legislative committee and how we were going to move forward with that. I know that Senator Goycochea talked about it coming back. I mean, everybody expects the registration issue to come back. It's just who sponsors that bill coming back and how that bill comes back, whether it's pushed by the commission, by TrailSafe, or who. I think that's still very much up in the air. The law's in place, it's just it wasn't clean enough to do anything with, so I think that's something we're just going to have to discuss through the legislative committee and figure out where that one's going.
Kim,
My understanding, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I don't know that the legislative committee or the commission has ever requested a BDR.
And just so that you understand that even though the session ends, there's bills that come out that were enrolled, that were approved, like SB 82 and SB 213 that had certain requirements of the commission and the department. And the trapping committee's been talking about how to, a lot of times, just because the legislature puts forth an NRS that changes, it has to be implemented through an NAC. And from what I understood, that was being discussed through all of the different committees, for the Bear Committee and the Trapping Committee, for the NAC to implement things. Now, even though we have an NAC, we have to go, our proposal, we go through the Legislative Commission in the interim, and that's basically the legislature during the interim. And if they come forward and say, I don't agree with this, I'm going to table it until the 2015 session, then there's not much we can do until they come back and clarify things. And from what I understand, some of the things that we did bring to the Legislative Commission, they said that. This isn't clear enough for us to act on, so we're tabling it. So oftentimes, just because there's an NRS, they have a mandate that says, you implement this, you produce regulations, department and commission, to implement this, and then we still have this mini legislature that has to approve them, the Legislative Commission. So until they agree with what we've brought forward, then we're back at the drawing table with that. But there's the subject matter committees that are dealing with that now. The Trapping Committee and the Bear Committee, where you guys are discussing how to implement certain things, and the review that you do there. Does that make sense?
Still just gray how it's gonna come back in the future, but I'm without a doubt, I know it will come back. Just who's driving the bus when it comes back is still yet to be seen. Commissioner Lane.
I've got, in the 2013 legislative session, I had just come on the commission, and I was able to attend some of the legislative committee's sessions. And it seemed to me that in many instances, and what you're saying on your time frame, you're talking about December, January meeting, having the legislative committee meet to talk about some of these bills, but it seemed like the commission in some respects was behind they were behind in terms of what was going on, because there were a lot of legislation that was being heard that the commission hadn't had a chance to take any position on. And I know that in Southern Nevada right now, and the reason I'm asking these questions is that in Southern Nevada, there's a Southern Nevada Forum that's been meeting for the last 3 months. And these are legislators and elected officials that are determined that they're going to try to get, some of their issues resolved, such as, the mental health and transportation. And so they're already now getting to the point that they're actually setting up language on some of the bills. So I'm just curious and looking at what they're doing versus the time frame that, has been established here. And I'm just wondering if maybe the legislative committee, should be meeting earlier as opposed to the schedule that you set out. It's just a question.
And in terms of us as a commission being behind, due to the frequency of our meetings and the frequency of committee meetings and how many times they can hear a particular issue in between our meetings, it really ties us as a commission to have much say as a commission in a lot of that legislation, because we could have reviewed it, there's been a change, and we haven't taken a formal action as a commission, so we can't speak on that change. Commissioner Drew and I, and sometimes you were there, and it wasn't in a formal position. It would be more question and answer period between members of the natural resource committees and commissioners on process and stuff. It wasn't a formal position by the commission because we couldn't take the formal position because we hadn't had time to vote on it as a body. And that's gonna occur every session. It's gonna look like we're behind, and we are. We just don't meet often enough to have a formal position on 90% of the legislation when it's evolving, and so we're always behind.
One more thing, Kim Jolly, for the record. I hear what you're saying, that perhaps there's discussion of a policy or a platform that is agreed upon in advance, which is what a lot of the legislators do. They have to start working before the session on big issues like mental health and healthcare and education, so that they have that conversation, because as soon as the session starts, they've all already submitted BDRs in September with language. And it is difficult for an advisory body that has to listen to other advisory bodies and the public on issues to make comments until they've seen language and until they've heard from the public on the policy implications that they hear. Because otherwise their mind is made up before they see language. We've all heard, well, I like this bill except for this one section, this one clause. So even though they might have a policy platform on certain topics, they still have to look at the language and hear the public before they take decisions.
And another thought on why we look like we're behind as a commission sometimes. You have bill sponsors that put a placeholder out there and will say a bill relating to wildlife. And that bill sponsor, we have no interaction with the commission and that bill sponsor. And so we're 100% blind onto what the content of that is. It just will say an act relating to wildlife. And until that language hits, we have no idea what it is. And that occurs more times than not, I believe, in wildlife legislation. We know something's coming. We just don't know what it is, what form it is, or what the language is that we're going to be dealing with. So in those situations, when it's introduced and we haven't met as a commission, we don't even know what's being introduced. So we can't have a formal position on that bill because we haven't seen the language at all. That happens a lot.
All right, well that's enough for me. Thank you.
I'm just glad you're here today to hear what we had to talk about on our hearing process, and maybe we need to review NRSs and NECs to see how we can unravel the problem we have.
I will make one statement on that. As the committee staff to the Administrative Procedures Policy and Regulations Committee, every 3 years there's a rules of practice review that all the boards and commissions have to undergo, and ours will be due in 2015. And the rules of practice include appeals and petitions, and then coming before the commission for public comment. So the way that we implement those rules of practice is in our commission policy 1, 3, and 4, and then also through NAC. So that would be an ideal time to have discussions about that, because I have to submit the report anyway, and so I can gather those things for you. And then if you want to pursue changes, then of course we can work with our DAG, and if we need to, the legislature. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Public comment is allowed on this. Is there any public comment?
Comments from Vegas.
Okay.
Hi, this is Jana Wright for the record. Good morning. I agree with Commissioner Lane. This was on my list to ask about. I would like the department to be proactive on a bill draft to clean up the trapping regulation on trap ID. This passed in 2011. I understand this. The Legislative Commission, there was confusion on whether mice, you'd have to get a trapping license, etc. But I think this would be a fantastic goodwill gesture by the department to move forward and be proactive and take the lead on getting the trap ID cleaned up and passed, so it'll be there for the 2015 trapping season. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you. Anybody else in Vegas have any comment?
Yes. Stephanie Myers would like to comment, Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. This is Stephanie Myers from Lee Canyon. SB 213 already passed, and it's passed except for this one clarification. And because of just the one clarification of not including mice and gophers in the trap ID, it's a perfect vehicle for the commission to actually act proactively. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's go to Elko. Does anybody in Elko have any comment?
No, not at this time.
Okay. And just so Clark and Elko know, when you guys speak, we don't see you on the monitor until you speak for 5 to 7 seconds. So we're stuck in Las Vegas right now until Elko speaks long enough that we'll transfer over to you guys. So if no public comment up there, we'll bring it back to Reno.
Record, Fred Bowles, a template that might work for you going forward is contact the Public Utilities Commission. They have a very well settled hearing process that they use. We have hearing officers, they're typically attorneys. The executive director there is Crystal Jackson, she's in Carson City. And I agree, the 4 hours that you folks had to spend yesterday on essentially redetermining the facts and going through the entire history of the violations of the one gentleman, you should not be spending your time doing. And it sort of suggests that trapping may be more problem than it's worth. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in Reno have any comment? Seeing none, we'll close this agenda item and move on to agenda item number 16, County Advisory Board to manage wildlife budgets. Deputy Director Cates and Finance Committee Chair Gildiani. Thank you.
Okay, for the record, Patrick Cates. I want to give you an overview of the County Advisory Board budgeting process. This is an annual process. The Commission has a duty and responsibility to approve budget requests from the County Advisory Boards. I provided a handout, and I have to apologize, I didn't consider the remote locations for that handout, but as soon as this meeting is concluded, I'll make sure these handouts get posted to our website so that people can look at these documents remotely. In the handout, I laid out the statutory authority for a county advisory board's budgeting process. Each county does have an established fund for the county advisory boards. County advisory boards are responsible for submitting budget requests every year to the department. The department reviews those and brings those budget requests to the commission meeting. And also the county auditor and county treasurers also have a responsibility to report their actual expenditures out of that fund. The main purpose of these funds is to facilitate travel, to pay for travel costs, typically for the county advisory board chairman or their substitute for them to travel to wildlife commission meetings. That's what most of the expenditures are. There also are some other expenditures. We pay workers' comp insurance for the CAP chair, and some CAPs have other expenditures, a recording secretary, some of those sort of things. I know Washoe Washoe and Clark have some of those expenditures. The timeline for review, submission and review and approval of CAB budgets. The CABs have already, and the counties have already been provided with the paperwork to complete in order to request to their budget. That is attached for your reference. The CABs have until May 1st in order to submit their budget request to the department. The counties have until May 30th to submit their reports on actual expenditures. Sometime in June, we'll have a finance committee meeting to review in detail those requests from the counties, CABs, and at the June 20th, 21st commission meeting, the commission will be presented with those budgets and asked to make a final approval. One of the issues that is always outstanding is the amount of money that counties have in their coffers. And I know last year when the commission made a motion, there was some flexibility in the language for us to do a final reconciliation with the counties, so that we weren't giving, sometimes they have substantial amounts of money that are rolled forward if they don't get spent. There's always some concern when we're asking fairly early in the year what their expenditures are going to be. So it gives us an opportunity to do a little true up, and whatever their approved budgets are, we just subtract whatever the ending balance is from the prior year. And that's kind of an overview of the process. Gil is going to speak a little bit more specifically about the information that's requested. I'm also available if any of the CAB chairs, they should have already received electronically from our staff the worksheets. Kim Germain is our new budget analyst. She's spearheading this process, and if you didn't receive an email from Kim and haven't seen your budget worksheets, please see me, and I'll be happy to provide that to you.
Thank you, Patrick. A little more detail, and what we're going to do, hopefully during the lunch break, I'm going to be glad to go into some of the detail with any of the CAB representatives that are here today that may not have some familiarity with this process. This year, I think you'll find it even easier than it was last year. We made a few changes in the spreadsheet and the formulas in the spreadsheet, and I think you'll find it relatively easy to deal with. The things that you'll, as Deputy Director Cates just said, some of the CABs hand in expense accounts to their county treasurer, and sometimes you don't get the priority of getting it processed as quickly as you like. And so the report that they give back to the department as to what your balance is could be not as accurate as you'd like or we'd like. And so I'm trying to suggest that you either meet with your county treasurer or talk to him on the phone to verify any outstanding expense accounts that have not been paid, so that the numbers that they provide to the department are as accurate as possible. Because based upon how much is left in your account in the treasurer, that depends on how much augmentation you will receive from the department. If you've got outstanding expense accounts that maybe some of your members have not submitted or you haven't submitted, I advise you to get those in and get them processed so that the balance in your account is accurate. The details that we'll go into or that you received from Kim Germain from the department is fairly straightforward. In the electronic attachments that you got, you'll receive the spreadsheet, the basic spreadsheet form, and several pages that go along with that. The other thing that I would suggest you do, and we'll talk about this more in detail, is go to the government's website to look at the per diem amounts payable for the various cities that we'll have the meetings in, so that you can enter in the correct amount. the issues with car rental, the number of days of your trip. Those are pretty much easy to fill in, and the expense amounts will automatically be calculated, and we'll go into this more detail. So if you have somebody that's relatively new on your county advisory board that has not done this before, if they didn't make today's meeting, if they have any questions, they can contact Kim or myself, and we'll be glad to work with them to ensure that you prepare the budget just as accurately as possible. So if anybody has any questions, I'll take them now, or if you want to wait until the lunch hour, we can go into a lot more detail. I'll also make available to each of the cabs an expense account that if you travel or your representative travel, it's an easy way to keep track of your expenses for your cab, and so you can keep a running total of what you have left in your account. And then if you see yourself running short towards the end of the state fiscal year, that you can approach the department and ask for an augmentation for additional funding for your particular cab. That's all I have, gentlemen.
Any commissioners have any questions or comments? Commissioner Beth?
Yeah, I got 3 items. First is, I wanna thank Gil. I don't know if the cabs really realize how lucky they are to have somebody who's taken ownership of the cab budgeting process and really, created a process that has worked very smoothly. I mean, I remember the past, how painful it was at times, and so I just want to again acknowledge Gil for all that he does. Second, I want to thank Patrick Cates, Deputy Director Patrick Cates, for his work. I'm glad to hear you've got an analyst now. That's I'm sure going to be helpful to you. I remember back when we didn't have the Deputy Director for the financial aspects of the department. And now that I sit here and look at what we're doing, I don't know how in the heck we got along without that position. I think that was a great move to put that position in. Third item is actually something that came up in the TAC committee, and I believe I talked to Gil about this and Deputy Director Cates. One of the issues that I think that we really need to keep on the radar screen is our revenue sources are relatively limited, and they really come from 2 basic sources: our federal funds and our tag and license sales. And I think we've been fairly lucky because we haven't had a fee increase on our licenses and tags for, I think, it goes back to like 2003 or 4, but it's getting on 10 years. And with even the little inflation we have, that still eats away at everything, and it's very difficult to try to maintain the operations of any either business or a governmental agency under those conditions. And we've been somewhat lucky that although I did not vote for President Obama, I'm very happy that some of the things that he's done have driven our PR funding through the roof, and then we've got these PR bumps. I'm not sure if you're aware, but ammunition and firearm sales drive a good chunk of that PR funding. And if we didn't have that, I think we would be in a pretty tough situation. And so I would encourage the department to get a handle on where they think that that funding may go and what the impacts could be on the department's operations. and be ready to rock and roll, to, look at license fee increases and tag fee increases. Nobody wants to do it, but since we are pretty much 99% funded by these sources, we better keep on our radar screen this issue and just be prepared to have to, especially with a 2-year legislative cycle like this, we need to be prepared to go to the legislature and say, it's time, and make our case. And I think the constituency, the sportsmen in particular, would support it. And I think that if we go to a governor who normally wouldn't want to see fee increases or tag fee increases or any kind of increases because they think it's a tax, would have a different view if they know that the rank and file and the actual end users, support it. And so I think, if you, plan for something like that, we'll be in good shape. But if not, and all of a sudden our peer funding goes down, I think we're going to be really scrambling.
Any other comments? Okay. Any comments from, we'll take it out to the cabs and we'll go to public comment. Any cabs have any comment on what you just heard? Okay. Any comment in Las Vegas?
No, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any comments in Elko?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any further public comment on this? Okay.